Hello and welcome to the nervous system quick summary. Dive in. Receptors, first of all, what do they detect? The eye. It doesn't detect sight, it detects light. The ear. I can put sound here. It technically is pressure, but they allow sound. The nose. It doesn't detect smell, it detects chemicals. Same for the tongue. Skin. You can say a few things here. It can detect hot and cold, pressure, and pain. Pain's a bit wrong because it's more like intense hot or intense pressure is perceived as pain. Um, Also, the tongue contains skin. You could say that those for the tongue as well, but let's keep it simple. So yeah, be careful putting nose detects smell. It detects chemicals. We perceive smell. Next, we're going to look at a reflex arc just to kind of get to grips with the neurons. Um, so let's just have a quick label of this. So this is our stimulus, pointy pin. At the end here, these are going to be receptors to pressure. And there, the end of this black line here is a sensory neuron. So I'm just going to highlight the sensory neuron. Yeah, it's all of this, all of that, all of that. That's its cell body, which nucleus is. All of this, all of that, and it stops there. So yeah, it's a big long cell. Yeah, it's going from my fingertip to my spinal cord, so it can be like a meter long. In a human, that's our sensory neuron. Then this is our spinal cord. Our spinal cord. CORD, there's no H in it. So this is, cut through. We're looking at like end on. It would be a big long cord coming out of the screen or out of the page. There's two like differences in like color. Hence, it's called, there's like a lighter grey and a darker grey. Hence, this is like the grey matter. Um, yeah, so this is a greyer bit and this is a whiter bit. But you don't need to know that. So let's do this next neuron. So this here is our relay neuron. You spell neuron with or without a final E. It's quite short, is the relay neuron. Its job is just to the nerve impulses onto the next neuron, and it's found solely within the spinal cord. And then we'll do our final one. Let's find a bit of colour. Sorry for this. Yeah, and then here we have our next neuron. This one is our motor neuron. Again, it's a long one again. Let's just colour in. So it goes to here, and that's all. It's like nerve endings there. That's our motor neuron. This is our muscle, our effector. So we have to be able to describe from stimulus to response how the nervous system works, and we're going to go through that on the next part of the sheet. The only thing I want to say here is why we have a reflex arc. Well, it's only going through 3 neurons. So from stimulus to response, it takes 3 neurons. 3 neurons. Or I can say it's only going through, well, there's a synapse here, 1 synapse there, 2, and then each of these is a synapse, but it's basically one big synapse. Well, it's going through 3 synapses. No, I got a little dash there, sorry. Therefore, it's faster. Not just fast, it needs to be faster response, so less chance of damage. They don't protect me from danger. Oops, I can't spell body. B-O. So they don't stop me from walking into the road. They will mean that I will jump back quickly when I see a car coming towards me. So again, I will write exactly what I put there. Yeah, that they are faster responses, so there's less chance of damage to the body because they only use 3 synapses. I could also say that that they don't require the conscious part of my brain. So they don't require the conscious part of brain. So let's have a quick look at a synapse again. So it's like that yellow circle at the end of one neuron and the beginning of another. So I've got one neuron here, and it has a swollen end, and then I've got another neuron, and then it goes into its long bit again. The long bit's called the axon. So these are axons, and this could be sensory and relay. It could be relay and motor. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, this is a gap in between. So there's a gap between. It's called the synaptic cleft. And basically, along here comes a series of nerve impulses. So that arrow is a nerve impulse. It's an electrical impulse. It's definitely not electricity. Okay, but yeah, I would just call it a nerve impulse. So when they arrive at the end of the neuron, so this is the end, it causes chemicals to be released. So these chemicals are released. So these here are chemicals. Okay, their posh name is neurotransmitters. And they're released from end of one neuron. And they diffuse across gap. That's the gap. And they trigger new nerve impulses. So that's like R1, chemicals are released. They diffuse across the gap. And 3, they trigger new nerve impulses. So we need these to kind of keep nerve impulses going one way only. So only this side can make the chemicals, only this side can detect them. So otherwise you'd have nerve impulses going the wrong way. It also means that kind of the chemicals can affect here. So like I've got like natural pain-killing chemicals that can numb these areas as well. And quite frankly, you don't need to get into the detail of how synapses work and why we need them. Chemicals diffuse across, but that diffusion means it slows it down. Hence why having fewer synapses means that it's going to be faster. If I send a nerve impulse to my brain for me to decide what to do, it's going to be passed through thousands of cells and thousands of synapses, and every synapse means chemicals need to diffuse, and therefore it takes time. So let's have a look at the response. So just going for a simple scenario. A start of a race, fires a gun, and the athletes start running. Describe the events that lead to this response. So I always learn these by SIRCR. SICR. And they're always going to start by giving you a stimulus to talk about. So the first S stands for stimulus. And the stimulus, they've told us in the question, it's the starter's gun is fired. So the stimulus is the sound of the starter gun. Then the R is receptor. What receptor am I going to use to detect the sound of the gun? So I'm going to say, that sound receptors in the ear detect the noise. They're more likely to ask about one that you've learned about in particular, that like the eye, or something to do with the temperature control. So, often it's like temperature receptors in the skin because you've fallen into cold water, or someone's shone a bright light into your eye, and therefore it's going to be the photoreceptors or the light receptors in the eye, in the retina, to detect it. But we're just going to go for a generic one here. So that's my receptor. And then we're going to get to the coordinator. So I get marks, most of the marks here for how do I transfer the information. So then I'm going to talk about nerve impulses are sent along sensory neurons to the brain. So the coordinator in this case is the brain, which is part of the CNS, central nervous system. But because I'm going to be deciding what to do here, it must be the conscious part of the brain. So let's put a little bit of detail here just for showing off. Well, it's the bit of my brain that is me and is thinking about it. So it's the cerebral cortex. Decides what to do. It decides the response. So again, that's like lots of neurons are involved there as I make that decision. So then I'm going to send nerve impulses. So again, it's another nerve impulse bit. Nerve impulses are sent along motor neurons to the muscles in the leg and other muscles as well. But let's just pick on one. So then we get to the effector, which I've already mentioned above. So yeah, so this is the so muscles in leg. I kind of said it above really. I'm going to put it here. Response. Muscles in leg, yeah, they contract. To cause the response, which is athletes start running. Okay, so it is one way we can add a little bit more detail as well about synapses. So I can mention about synapses, that blue asterisk or that blue asterisk. So I can mention synapses. But chemicals diffuse. It was a 6 marker. The effector, that's either a muscle contracts, which mentioned, or it could be a gland which would secrete. So they like to ask about that one, the secreting, if it's a sweat. It's like the only gland that we really kind of like learn about sweat, yeah, in relation to cooling. And as soon as it becomes temperature regulation, that's when, again, we know the detail of the coordinator. It's the thermal regulatory center in the medulla in the brain. So yeah, it's just being aware that it can be very generic like this, standing on a pin, like tasting some chocolate or something. I don't know. But yeah, just try and frame your answer with stimulus, receptor, coordinator, effector, and response. And the only other thing is the central nervous system. That's the brain and the spinal cord. So if it's a reflex, you talk about the spinal cord. If it's anything conscious, you would talk about the brain. Okay, but there's no harm in saying part of the central nervous system as well. Wonderful. I shall stop there.